Hi, everyone, and welcome to our PD seminar. We're happy to have you here with us today. My name is Lydia, and I'll be moderating the session for you guys today. Over the summer, I was Forest City Youth Film Festival coordinator with FCFF, and I'm excited to be back helping out with this seminar. We are here as a festival to support you as teachers, so please give us feedback if you can. Submissions for the 2021 Youth Film Festival are now open. Our categories are narrative, documentary, experimental, pitch, animation, music video, and promo video. So our categories cross multiple subjects. So please urge your students to submit their video. Any student that's in high school can submit more than one film across all categories. And as long as they go to high school in Southwestern Ontario, they can submit a film. So head over to our website, fcff.ca, and click the Youth Fest tab to see what we're all about. There you'll also find other wonderful resources for your students, so please go check it out. As always, you can head over to the Educators portal to view our past seminars, including this one. This one will be recorded for you and posted on the Educators portal so that you can view it later. We have Elise here with us today. She is a teacher with TVSB, teaches communications and tech, and she'll be telling us about the importance of media and how integrating media can benefit your class and your teaching goals. Matt Brickman is also here with us today. Matt is a professor in the Faculty of Advanced Filmmaking at Fanshawe College, and he'll be showing us how to create a great video using a smartphone or tablet. At the end of Matt's presentation, we'll have a short Q&A period, so please, if you have any questions at all, please type them in the chat there and we will answer them at the end. And now I'm going to pass things off to Elise.
Hi there. Thank you, Lydia, for the nice introduction. I just wanted to say welcome, everyone, and we're very excited to have you here discussing the importance of incorporating technology into your classrooms, and along with getting some essential technical skills that you can gain from Matt's presentation as well. So hopefully you find a couple of tips and tricks that you can apply in your own classrooms after tuning in with us today. I'm just going to share my presentation starting from the screen here. Okay, so incorporating technology into the classroom and why this is important. This is what I'll be discussing with you. Again, just to reiterate and introduce myself, my name is Elise Booth. I'm a communications technology educator at HB Secondary School for Thames Valley District School Board. I also have a photography business on the side, doing at Shutter Photos, and specialize in virtual tours. Okay, so how to bring technology into your own classrooms. These are the key points that I'm going to discuss with you today. Just to do a brief overview, why integrate technology in your class? Well, it increases engagement, it develops transferable skills, it activates a creative outlet and self-expression for your students, it provides personal investment and meaning, and prepares students for future careers and the online world of applications. Number one, so engaging your students. This requires utilizing media and technology in your delivery and your lessons. So regardless of what subject area you're teaching in, you'll find that certain tools that we use as educators can draw our students in. So whether you're incorporating like videos or graphic design print or podcasts, music, Depending on your subject area, these will differ, but the way that we deliver them as educators can kind of be our hook and our way to connect with our students. And I find teaching communication technology, the skill set for them to be able to complete assignments using the technology at their fingertips. So they can use their cell phones for so many different connective ways that they interact with each other, but also providing opportunity for them in class to be able to like take photographs and then get to share them and explain them. Or as opposed to writing some type of essay, they can create like a video spot or a how-to video or a podcast or something that relates with current social events that give them opportunity for different ways for showing their knowledge to you. So engaging your students using technology, but then also in a reciprocal way, having them use technology to provide demonstrating their knowledge to you, knowledge and understanding. Transferable skills. So technology and media offer so many transferable skills when they're using this type of technology to demonstrate their learning. It provides them with critical thinking and problem solving, analytical strategies. They have to know how to follow the instructions of what you're asking them to do, but also demonstrate how that they understand it. It requires patience, especially with remote learning right now and what I have with my students teaching them. It also is a really great way to build community with them. So if you have collaborative projects where they use technology together so that they can share their learning, but do community building along with having to interact with each other. So as opposed to doing all isolated and independent projects and assignments, it's a way for them to get to talk and share. Revising and reflecting. So I know currently using remote learning, we'll have students demonstrate like kind of their progress so far. So right now we have them designing, using photography and graphic design, their own magazine covers. And in our Google Meet groups, they'll present their screens and show what they've done so far, and then give each other feedback and reflect and revise what they've done so that they can kind of learn from one another and have to like socially interact as well, especially when everything's been virtual. It also helps them develop the technical skills, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So activating a creative outlet. This differentiated instruction to promote and encourage students to demonstrate their understanding in creative ways. So one of these I find you'll have students that have such different variety in their interests that it allows them, when you open the floor and differentiate the way that they can submit their assignments and demonstrate their learning. So as opposed to having a student who is super into like audio and sound, and maybe they want to create a podcast to demonstrate what they've done, versus I'll have another student who wanted to do like a video. And this allows them to be creative in different ways throughout their courses. They don't necessarily just have to be in like a media or communication technology course for this. They can be in history or science or English and or phys ed, and have a way that they can be creative using their technology. Because let's face it, they're usually on their phones anyway. So this is a way for them to get to use their phones in a academic but educated way as well. So it gives them a creative outlet. Number 4, so it provides personal investment and meaning to them. So providing opportunities for students to share their creative expression will increase their investment in learning, and it will bring forward meaning and purpose of their efforts. So I find when you have students who are super invested in the assignments that they're working on and the learning that they're doing, because of that investment, it also ties really closely with the meaning that they have and that they gain from wanting to do something. So having your assignments not just seem like it's work and they're doing it to kind of check it off and have it done, but a way to grant that personal investment for them so that they intrinsically enjoy what they're doing, and at the same time they're engaged, but then they also it brings forth their effort. They want to try harder and they want to create something that they're proud of so that they can end up sharing it and revising it in a group setting. So I find when you integrate their interests and you use technology and media, it's a way for them to improve their personal investment. And then hopefully become more successful in the task they're trying to achieve. Number 5. Okay, so this one is super important. Preparing for the future. So the majority of our careers and jobs require a sense of technological literacy. All applications are essentially online submissions and portfolios. So universities, colleges, workplace, and self-employment require online profiles as well. So at this time, we are in the middle of course registrations, and we have so many students that are trying to navigate My Blueprint. And in the future, that will be them applying for university or college if that's the route they decide to take, which will be online. And if they're not doing that and they're looking for work or a job, that will probably be online as well. So allowing them the opportunity to become more technologically literate in what's available to them is a huge benefit of why it's so important to integrate this type of technology into your courses. So it doesn't just have to be in a careers and civics course where you have them looking into like post-secondary opportunities online and finding the requirements and portfolio submissions. And I find like the more well-versed they are and the more confident they are using and navigating these interfaces, they'll be more successful and confident to then use the technology to apply and successfully kind of pick their path of where they want to move forward. That being said, moving on to ways to integrate it. So you can do, and several of you probably already do this on your day-to-day basis as well. So you integrate videos to show examples, but instead of just showing them the videos, they can also create their own and have their ways of demonstrating their learning be create a video yourself, or design opportunities so they can make, for print, they can make posters, they can use Canva, which is a free online platform for them that starts with templates that are already there. Social media posts, so if you're integrating this into like English or you want to use it for history or science and they have to kind of demonstrate in their lab, take a photograph of it, and then write a social media post of something you might see in a magazine. Music, photos, podcasts, and websites are all great ways that you can integrate technology, not only in your lesson delivery, but how students are submitting and connecting with you in their coursework. I hope this has sparked some kind of new ways of thinking, but interest in you and ways that you can bring technology into your classrooms. I'd like to open the floor, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Any questions, Lydia?
Hi. So yeah, we do actually have a question from Laura. How do you help your students pick a focus to capture personal investment and meaning?
That's an excellent question. So how do you help your students pick a focus to capture personal investment and meaning? So I find a great way to start with that is talking to them about their interest and things that they would like to know more about depending on the subject area they're in. So if you're teaching, say, phys ed and they want to learn more about nutrition, or something with science and biology and they want to kind of break things down and start with something that they have more questions about, or something where they have a sense of curiosity. I usually at the beginning will throw out several different topics of options just to get the ball rolling with them in their brainstorm stages. And then from there, I find talking to them or them talking to each other will end up creating a focus that they didn't even know from the beginning would end up being the focus for their either project and personal investment. But I think it's something that's more subtly comes to surface versus at the beginning them just knowing, okay, I'm going to do this and now I'm invested. It's definitely an ongoing process that's developed over the course of the project and time.
Of course.
But it starts with their curiosity and their interest. Good question.
Yeah, that was a great question. We have another question from Lisa.
Okay.
She says, hi, when doing videos for online in the virtual classroom, what do you do to get them into Dropbox or Brightspace or any one of those? How do you get them to navigate those spaces?
So often what I'll have if they're submitting their videos, what we do, and when it's online and the whole class is there, say in a Google Meet, they'll use the present mode and share the video right there so everybody can watch it together. And then we talk about it after. Some students, they don't turn on their mic at all, and they'll talk and give feedback through the chat. Other students, they will turn on their mic, but they won't turn on their camera and vice versa. So it ends up being a very interesting kind of dialogue through different media forms. But to get them to submit them. So that's one way where it's ongoing in the class right there. They share their screen, we watch it, and we talk about it so they instantly get feedback.
Mm.
Another way where they actually, so when they've created their video, they download it and then upload it as an assignment. So every video assignment is attached. So they can't see each other's videos unless I'll talk to them and ask them if they'd like to share them. So they submit them under the assignment tab.
Okay. Awesome. That's great. We also have one last question before moving on.
Okay.
Any examples of starting those ideas, like sparking that curiosity, like you were talking about before, like any brainstorming things you've had success with in your classroom?
Yeah, well, it depends. So depending on the topic that you want to spark their interest in, I find it's really an easy way is to start with a thought-provoking photograph.
Mm.
And it's somewhere where it's opinion-based, so students feel safe to express their thoughts and ideas, or like a 30-second video clip of something that's related to the topic, but there's no wrong answer if they share what they think because it's subjective. And that way they feel like, well, I think this. And then you'll have another student being like, what do you think about that? And they'll discuss. I'll usually open the floor, like, so with the video, a short video or the photograph, and then say, why do you think these are effective? Or why do you think they're ineffective? So they have to start critically thinking and sharing and also problem solving to answer the question. And as soon as you get a few students finally like speaking their mind, it opens the floor for more students to want to participate and either agree or rebuttal. But the main thing is they're talking and they're starting to share ideas of like why they think the way they think. And then they have to kind of advocate and explain it to the class.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thanks so much for
Okay.
sharing your knowledge with us, Elise, and
No
for
problem.
answering those questions. And we hope to use you in the future for more
Thank you.
for the more spreading of your knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah. And now we are going to move into Matt's presentation. So enjoy.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt Brickman. Nice to see you and thanks for coming today. A couple things to set up before I start sharing my screen is welcome, and I hope based on what Elise was talking about, we're going to talk about a bunch of techniques now and some tools that you can hopefully use or at least try and inspire your students with. And the one thing to keep in mind as I present today is that I know we're all coming at this kind of stuff from different levels and different kind of levels of expertise, I guess. And I'm going to talk about some basic things. I'm going to talk about some maybe intermediate and maybe some more advanced things. But the goal is to kind of start pondering some things and how you can use technology and also kind of unlock some creativity that way as well. So I hope you enjoy it. A little bit about me before I start. I teach at Fanshawe College, and I teach in the advanced filmmaking program as well as the visual effects and editing program. And I teach mostly post-production, but a little bit of production as well. So I teach mostly editing, motion graphics, and things like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here, and good. All right, so we've got a lot of slides to go through today, and we are going to, sorry, give me one sec here, there we go. We are going to talk again about a lot of different techniques and tools, but I want you to, where you're also going to have access to this as a PDF, by the way. So you'll be able to kind of review this content as you need to. And all of my slides have links in them to the tools we're talking about, or techniques, or even just the image sources and that. So you'll have access to all this stuff after the fact. What we're going to do is I'm going to spend about half an hour kind of covering these few topics. So we're going to kind of define what mobile production is. We're also going to talk about the techniques and tools you can use for mobile production as well as post-production, and then talk about stock content, which is very handy and very helpful especially in this virtual world in the last year that we've been in, and then talk about some resources of all the links and things like that. And then there'll be a chance for Q&A at the end of my session as well. So I wanted to start by defining mobile production, just because I mean, what does that mean? What does that, depending on what you teach or what experience you have, or what students are coming from and what experience they have, it might mean different things. So today I'm going to focus on kind of mobile production from a film and video perspective. And we're going to look at production and post. But moving forward, I want you to think about mobile production as many different things. So kind of like what Elise was talking about, you could be video, it could be audio, it could be photography, screen captures, websites, et cetera, et cetera. So however you want to define kind of mobile production and into your virtual classrooms moving forward is kind of up to you. So again, we're going to have kind of a film and video slant today, but I want you to kind of keep an open mind and think about how you can incorporate, mobile techniques throughout all classes, whether it's video or otherwise. So the power of mobile production I want to talk a bit about, because there's a lot of people that are split on mobile production from a film perspective. So there's a lot of people that like to work with high-end tools and think mobile is not even a thing and wouldn't even consider it. But on the other hand, mobile production is accessible to a lot of people. Okay, so it's kind of democratized how production is done, whether that's photography, video, et cetera. And some of the great things about it is it's a short learning curve usually, right? If you get a new app, you can usually learn it within a few minutes or maybe a few hours or whatever it might be. Most things are low budget in the mobile world. So you can find a lot of free apps, or you can find a lot of very cheap apps for a few dollars or whatever that do really nice video and give you some kind of professional controls over your exposure or your focus, whatever that might be. And then I put here creatively liberating or creatively confining. And I think that depends on your point of view and how you view technology, I suppose. But I think it's creatively liberating, right? I teach at the college level, and a lot of my postgrad students love using their phones to shoot videos, even if it's just one visual effect shot. They can use their phone and shoot it really quickly, easily, and then post it. And it's kind of just liberating in that sense, where there's no kind of preventative measures about time setting up a big camera or just getting access to a big camera and things like that. I also have a few links here, which we're not going to really look at right now, but they're there for you to look at. But Steven Soderbergh, who's pretty famous and big director out of Hollywood, he's directed a lot of different movies that I'm sure you're aware of, but his last two films he's made have been both shot with iPhones. And one of them's called Unsane, one of them's called High Flying Bird. And High Flying Bird just came out last year, 2019 maybe, and it's a documentary that was released on Netflix about the NBA lockout. And he did have some tools that we're going to talk about today, different apps and some hardware, like little lenses he could attach to his phone and things like that. But he also, that third link there, Only iPhones, is him kind of talking about he's only ever going to shoot films on iPhone from now on. And I just think there's something amazing about that, where we're seeing some people at the high level embrace this. Again, some people don't, but there are people that are embracing mobile technology and the use of mobile production for kind of big budget or at least high profile films. So I encourage you to check out those links just out of curiosity, maybe more than anything. And there's some great films there as well. So we're going to start with mobile production now. And these are the things we're going to talk about from a production point of view. We are going to look at some lighting basics. And so lighting can be a big complicated thing, as I'm sure you see in behind the scenes on movies, like on DVD or on YouTube and things like that, or DVD behind the scenes, I was going to say. But it doesn't have to be that complicated. You can use natural light. You can watch where shadows fall. You can use practical light fixtures, which means whatever you have kind of available to you, a lamp, just your overhead lighting, whatever it might be. And then we're going to talk about creating mood and thinking about what that means and how you can accomplish that. Then we're going to talk about some composition basics. So just how you should frame things, what's in the frame as well as what you leave out of the frame is kind of just as important, right? So talking about some differences there. And then we'll talk about some of the tools that you can use, some apps that you can use for capturing video. So if you look at my video right now, if you guys can all still see me, I've got this window that I'm kind of in front of. I've got my computer set up in front of the window. So all the light you see on me right now is natural light. And so I just kind of encourage you to use natural light as much as possible. And so I've got some examples at the bottom there of kind of some what to do and what not to do, or as long as you know how the light's working, maybe it's a creative choice. So if you're shooting into a window, for instance, you can see that if you're trying to expose for your subject, outside the window usually is really overexposed, and that's where you see all this white right here. And oops, I'm gonna go back. And you'll also, I'm just gonna grab this pointer here. So you can see it's kind of overexposed here, but then if you try and expose for the outside, then that's gonna mean your face or whatever your subject is gonna be shadow and dark. And then if you kind of turn everything away from the window and use the light from a window, it can change the way your shot looks. And so these are, again, just simple examples, but even for Zoom calls and things like that, using natural light like this can make a big difference in how you appear on camera. And I think, so again, just considering kind of direction and where the light's coming from and how you're facing it is a big thing. So again, if you're making creative choices in how you use this natural light, then maybe you can break some of these rules, if you will. Okay, so my general recommendation though is try to avoid seeing windows in your frame at all and just use light from those windows instead. Okay. All right, moving forward. So let's talk about some practicals. I mean, in the film world, practical lights are usually lights that are practical. So it might be a lamp on set, but you're seeing that in the scene or in the frame of a shot. Okay, so in the film world, that's kind of the definition of practical lighting. However, what I recommend for all of us, mobile production and educators, think of practicals as just anything you can use. And if it's in the shot or not, just think of practical lighting instead of film lights, right? You don't need big film lights or anything like that to kind of make a good look. Generally, you can use natural light and any practicals that you have available to you. Okay, so practical examples are some of the visual examples you see there: lamps, candles, maybe device screens if you've got a computer screen lighting someone's face or a TV or something, and then interior and exterior. So practical lights can be at night, could be lamp posts or lights coming from stores, things like that. Okay, so yeah, again, I want to reiterate that you don't need to have like big budgets and have specific gear to kind of pull all this stuff off. You can have just whatever you have access to works really well. So here are just a couple of examples. These are actually phone videos that I do quite a bit of freelance work on the side of Fanshawe, and in the last year, I've been doing a lot of editing for clients that are trying to kind of create some video in the virtual world. And so these are two examples that were shot on iPhones or phones. I don't know if they were iPhones. And you can see that there's no windows in these shots, and they're just kind of using practical and or natural lighting. So the guy on the left, you can see obviously has a window and a lot of light coming in from that left side. And then the other example looks like it was shot with some practical lights, just with a couple of lamps or maybe some overhead lighting turned on. Okay, so again, no windows in the shot, but they're using light from natural sources. Here's a couple of practical examples from the pro world, if you will. So the left example is from the movie Skyfall. And so again, in the film world, a practical is a lamp that appears in the frame, and it's also used to light the subject. So you can see Naomi Watts there sitting at the table, and the light from the table is lighting kind of the front of her body, her face, etc. Okay, and then some candle examples as well. That's a Stanley Kubrick film. And then here are some pro examples of using light, natural light creatively. And when I say natural light, in these cases, they might not be all natural light. It could be, professional lights mixed with natural light. But I think you get the idea. If you look at these examples, the left example is a scene from Better Call Saul, the show. And you can see it's very dark and shadowy inside, but then outside there's natural light coming through the window, and you can kind of see out there, it's exposed out that window. And then in Minority Report, Tom Cruise is kind of the inverse of that. So it's very bright outside that door, window, or whatever is there. And that's kind of the look that Spielberg was going for. So it's overexposed behind him, but that natural light is meant to be overexposed. So it looks like he's kind of enveloped in the light there. So I want to talk a bit about shadow, because using light and seeing kind of where shadow falls is just as important. So even if I can't see my shot right now, but if you look at my shot, I'm using natural light to light myself, but I've got these blinds closed here, and that creates a bit of shadow kind of behind me. And so I'm brighter in the foreground and my background's a little darker. So that's just one example of me just kind of mindfully closing those blinds and making sure there's a bit of shadow behind me. If I open those, there'd be a lot less shadow back there, and it'd be a bit brighter and almost as bright as I am. Right. So that's one thing to think about. And even if I'm using this natural light and I turn a little bit, I don't know what it looks like, but maybe there's a bit of shadow then created across my face. So two things I want you to consider and or ponder is the position and direction of you, the subject, or whoever you're shooting, or whoever your students are shooting as the subject. And then the second thing is the position and direction of the light source. Okay, so right now I'm facing straight at my light source. But if I turn a little bit, then my light source kind of becomes 45 degrees from where I'm facing. And if I turn even more, that's 90 degrees, and so on and so forth. So just considering angles and direction can make a big difference in this mood that you're trying to create. Okay, so again, flat lighting is nice because it looks good for situations like this, but maybe if I'm shooting a film or taking a photo for a project and I want to create some mood, maybe I want some shadow falling across my face. Okay, another example might be if I have a practical light, instead of natural light, maybe I have a lamp or just a light bulb with the lamp shade on or off. And maybe I put it here, and what kind of light does that create across my face rather than if I put it in front? What's that going to do? Okay, so just little things like changing the position of the light by even a few feet can make a big difference of how light falls on your subject, and also how the mood that's created inside that shot from a content perspective. Okay, and then the position of the light just physically high or low as well. So if you have the light low, which actually I've got some visual examples here that show this off quite well. Oh, before that actually, again, using what you have access to in your home can make a big difference. So I've got an example of Venetian blinds, which I just talked about. So whether those are open or closed, if you want to use tinfoil to reflect light, or even just white or dark subjects to either bounce light or kind of kill light, that can make a big difference too. And there's tons of stuff on YouTube that kind of shows you how to do that, how to make good lighting with what you have in your home, things like that. It's out there, and it's pretty easy to do if you just kind of invest a little bit of time. And so I have an example there from Harry Potter where they're bouncing light. So there's a big white card there where they're reflecting a little bit of light to fill in some shadows, maybe where they don't want some. So thinking about maybe how you can bounce light can work too. So let's look at some examples of mood. So here on the left, there's 4 examples of just different positions and angles of light. So again, if light is kind of high angle and in front of you, what that looks like, versus if it's maybe lower angle and off to the side and you get that shadow across your face. Okay, so, and then what if the light's lower and kind of looking up at you? The classic example is like a flashlight at the campfire, right? So just considering where the position of your lights are, and then creative effects, like that's just a shot using sunlight and some Venetian blinds, and it's a cool effect, and it's a nice, cool little photo, right? So whatever you have access to can be used creatively and look really great. Okay, I am just going to do a time check here. Okay, we're going to talk about some composition basics now, and these are the topics. So rule of thirds, kind of subject and action direction, eye level framing, headroom, and lead room. So these are kind of all the grids maybe you could possibly see on a camera, and smartphones, whatever camera app you're using, you can turn these grids on and kind of use them as guides to help you figure out exactly how to compose a shot or where people are positioned in the frame. So we'll talk about some of these now. So rule of thirds, I'm sure everyone's heard of in some capacity or another, but it's basically just splitting a frame into thirds horizontally and vertically. And so how you balance people or subjects or even just objects in a shot based on breaking it into thirds can make a big difference of how it looks and how it feels. So the one thing I want to talk about specifically today is just where those cross points are. And again, on your smartphone, you could turn on the grid and see this. If you turn on the rule of thirds grid, which in most phones, I think it might just be called the grid, then you can, where those lines intersect are called power points. Okay, so using those power points, where can you position, people, subjects, characters, objects in the frame, and how's that going to make it feel? Is it going to be balanced? Is it going to be unbalanced? Is it going to be there for, is it going to be unbalanced for a reason or balanced for a reason, and so on. Okay, so rule of thirds is the first one. And then just kind of expanding on that, again, proper balance is that top example. So if you think about a classic documentary interview, that's kind of the subject's off to the left a little bit and looking across to screen right. Okay, and then if you do the opposite, where maybe someone's pushed closer to one side, it can maybe be, give the viewer an uncomfortable feeling, or maybe feel trapped or something like that. So it can be an expression of character as well. Another common use in many different types of film and video production is the position of the camera. So eye level means that the viewer is kind of at the same level as the subject or the character. So in most documentaries, cameras are at eye level, much like you see in my shot right now. And then there's also high angle and low angle and what that means. So if it's a low camera position, maybe it usually suggests the subject or character is strong and powerful. And if it's the opposite, it's usually weak and or powerless. All right, headroom. Headroom, when you're setting up shots for photo or video, it's considering, where the use of headroom and the position of where your subject is in the frame can make a big difference as well. So the top example there is kind of a funny one, where it's like showing there's a lot of headroom there. And do you want that? And if so, why? Does it make sense to have that much? Because usually you want the subject's head pretty close to the top of frame, right? And there's, again, guides that you can use to help kind of dial that in if you want. So again, just another technique of making sure things either feel balanced in the frame or not. And if you're not balancing things in the frame, then why are you doing that? From a film perspective, does that mean you're trying to, get across another expression of character, or are you zooming in really tight and making somebody feel trapped? It just depends on what your kind of story or content is going to be. Okay, but again, this can. Everything I'm talking about, again, some of this is getting a bit high level, but I think what I want you to keep in mind is that even if you assign your students like one simple photography project or one little video project, these can be applied, right? If you want them to kind of take maybe they've got, some flowers on their table at home and you want them to take a picture of that, a lot of these things can apply, and thinking about that before they shoot and where the light is, how the flowers are positioned in the frame, things like that. This can make a big difference of how the picture it turns out for the assignment. And then the last thing we're going to talk about in this section is lead room. So again, using that rule of thirds, if there's action in a frame, is there a lot of space kind of in front as somebody walks? Or is the camera following? Or maybe it's not. There's not a lot of space there. And so what does that mean? So if there's usually some nice lead room there, it's kind of comfortable to the eye. If there's a lot less lead room, then maybe it gives the opposite feeling, right? Less comfortable, again, the feeling of being trapped or on the edge of something. All right, and another big topic, which happens a lot at the college level, and I'm sure maybe at high school too for photography, video, and any other projects like it, is using depth that you have. And that doesn't mean depth of field and the focus on your camera or anything. I just mean depth of the room you're in. So the one thing I always tell my students if I'm teaching production is no backs against the wall. Do not have your subjects just stand against the wall. The classic shot in the college world, and maybe in high school, is just somebody standing against lockers like this, and their just backs are against the lockers. And that just means to me, what that means is there's no depth in the shot. It also means you might have some shadow issues. So that top example there, when you turn on any lights, even if it's natural lighting, you're gonna have shadows. If you're that close to the wall, there's going to be shadows that you see there, and usually that's not a good look and look you'd want, right? So the bottom example again is a pro setup, but you can see they're in somebody's living room or something, but they're using kind of the depth diagonally across the room. So instead of sitting in the chair right against the wall, they've kind of set everything up so that there's 20 feet or whatever behind the subject, and that usually makes for a nicer shot. Okay, so trying to avoid that feeling of flatness or blandness in the shot where somebody's just back against the wall. Okay, so again, that locker example, it could be like if they're standing like this, even if they just turn a little bit and then you start shooting down the hall, it usually feels so much nicer. Okay, and it will look so much nicer as well. And so here's a few more mobile examples. So there's a few using depth, right, where there's a lot of space, whether it's interior, exterior, right? There's quite a bit of space behind the subjects, or they fill that space with some cool background objects. So that top left example is a guest speaker who is an Olympian wrestler, I think. And so she's got some of her trophies and whatever in the background there. And it's kind of a decent shot, even though there's not a ton of space behind her, there's a bit of depth there. And then the bottom right is kind of the complete opposite, where it's back against wall. You can see there's an outline of shadow there. Some decent lighting on her face in that, but there's still that ring of shadow around her because she's so close to that wall and the lights are kind of shooting right there, and there's that shadow created. So again, just using that depth, if she turned and maybe shot down her living room or something, then maybe it would have looked a little nicer. Okay, so let's talk about some mobile production tools. And I know that the college world might be a little different than high school. And so depending on where you're from and what board you work for, you might have different policies that you have to follow for various reasons. So the tools I'm going to talk about today are kind of recommendations. And if you're allowed to suggest those to students or not, it's kind of up to you. But I'm just going to talk about a few tools in general, and then you can kind of pull from context and maybe find the similar tools that you're allowed to use or that your board supports. So things to think about when you're choosing tools are: what are the features and capabilities? What are the costs? Is there a cost associated, or are there free apps? And most times there's free apps available that you can use that do really good work. So the great thing about tools, especially in the last, 5, 6, 7 years, is that most built-in camera apps or even downloadable apps have good exposure and focus control. So you can change the exposure a little bit, you can lock it in place so it stays, and it usually does pretty well that way. Okay, and then there are other tools that have more advanced features. So here are some examples, like the built-in cameras on iOS and Android, for instance. And then there's a tool called WeVideo, which I think there's some of you out there that use that already, which is pretty good. I just downloaded it this week to test for this, and it's kind of a neat little app. And then there's another one called Filmic Pro, which does cost money, but it kind of shows you the scope of what's possible on mobile devices. I think it's $20 to download, but so it's not really a recommendation maybe for your students to get or anything, but if you just want to check it out, because it basically gives you all the pro features that maybe a bigger like Sony camera or whatever might have. So it's got that control, but right on a smartphone. And then kind of referencing back to those Steven Soderbergh examples, he in his films, he bought these little lens adapters for whatever phone he was shooting on. So you can actually get different fields of view and different looks for your film too. So that's an example of some hardware you can get, and maybe some of your students have already. Okay, so if they have that, then they can use this to kind of unlock their creative idea. Okay, let's talk about some mobile post-production now. As I was saying at the beginning, I teach mostly post-production at Fanshawe. So I'm going to talk a bit about the process of post-production from a mobile perspective, but then also look at some ideas for cutting story if you're shooting videos, and then some tools. So one thing I wanted to say is that it's, especially in this virtual world now, is that it's really hard to kind of find a balance of creative and technical, because I find that at the college level, a lot of my students have really great ideas, and sometimes the hardest part for them is to technically unlock their ideas, if you know what I mean. So learning how to use the tech to fulfill their creative idea. And so I don't know if that exists at the high school level. I imagine maybe it does, but finding apps that your students can use quite easily will then kind of unlock their creativity from there. And so one thing about post is it's all about organization. So usually when you have, even if you're shooting stuff on your phone, you might shoot, 15 video clips and you've got all this stuff. And then how do you kind of arrange it all and make it in one finished pack, put it together in one finished package that you can then show your teacher, show your friends, show the world on social media, whatever it might be. So I always talk about post as kind of the organization process of all this stuff you're capturing from production, and whatever that production is may vary. Okay, and then I also talk about, this is more a higher level thing where it's the traits of a successful editor. But the one thing I want to stress here is that no matter what level of work you're doing, I always stress to my students, just keep an open mind and be adaptable and listen. Those are kind of the main points. And then there's also collaboration, creative and technical skill, all that stuff we've kind of talked about. But you might have one idea at the beginning of a project, you shoot a bunch of stuff, and then in the edit, maybe it comes together a little different. And having that open mind and not being too stuck on maybe one thing or another is a great mindset to have when you enter post-production. Okay, and this is actually kind of a cross of production and post-production, but considering shot sizes. And when I have kind of newer college students, if I teach in the first or second year, especially, and even in the post-grad level, sometimes there's some great videos made, but a lot of times they're just cutting from medium shot to medium shot to medium shot, and it's always the same shot size. Okay, so I always stress to my students, and it's great for the high school students to kind of wrap their head around this too, is what do different shot sizes mean? Extreme wide shots, and all the way down to extreme close-ups, right? Which might be a shot like this. So even if it's just wide shots, mediums, and close-ups, that's great, and then they can edit between them. Okay, and even from a photography perspective, it's great where if you're out shooting something and maybe it's a landscape assignment, they maybe shoot a wide shot, but then they could walk in and maybe get some close-ups of some flowers or the stream that's there. Or if they're shooting street photography, maybe they get a wide shot of the building, but then maybe shoot just the door, right? Because then you never know, when you're editing photos, maybe you'll like one more than the other, or at least you'll have options while you're editing. And from a film perspective, this is what some different shot sizes might look like. So wide shots can be anything from like a whole, valley in the Rockies, let's say, to maybe just a room. And so if you're just kind of setting up a location, a wide shot of a room is kind of the wide shot, even though it might not feel that big. That's kind of the wide shot. And then maybe there's a medium wide shot, so medium shots or medium close-ups, and then some close-ups. Okay, so getting students to at least think about that. I've got some kids in high school, actually, myself, and my daughter used to make some videos for some old assignments. And one thing I would tell her is just make sure you get different shot sizes. And I know not all students would have that, but she would, when they would cut it together in iMovie or whatever they were using, it would make sense to her that, oh, it makes sense to kind of start wide and move in. So just at a basic level, it can still be used quite efficiently and quite well. Okay, so let's talk about cutting on action. And I have some visual examples, but cutting on action kind of at its basic level is just what is kind of the tempo of a scene if you're cutting it, or it could even just be, if you're cutting like a 15-second commercial, that would still have its tempo or pace. What is it going to feel like from a timing perspective, and how are you going to cut through that scene? So what I always tell my students is cut when the action is happening. So that's what kind of cutting on action means, is instead of staying on maybe a medium shot of me setting something down, maybe cut when my arm's halfway and then cut to that close-up as I set it down, right? And that's just a really simple example. So again, whatever that movement is, it could be something crazy like a Bruce Lee fight scene, or it could be something as simple as just opening a door handle. Cut when the action and the movement and the flow is kind of happening. And then that way the cuts kind of feel very natural and the scene will continue to flow. Okay, a lot of what I see in the college level is when they're learning this is that they'll say action, then the person will start walking, and then you'll watch this in the post-production process, you'll see this all kind of coming together. And then the person stops walking and then they'll cut to something else. Whereas if they cut when the action's happening, it feels a little nicer. Okay, so generally you want to avoid cutting when things are static, cut when the action is happening. All right, I have just one example here, which I'm going to click the link and take us there just so we can quickly watch it. So based on, I've got a clip from The Mandalorian here. So I don't know if you guys can hear the sound. It's not as important for the sound, but you'll notice as the cuts happen, watch when they cut from like the medium to the close or the wide. It's always happening when there's some movement happening. So if we watch this, especially when he kind of hands Baby Yoda over, see it cuts when his arms are still moving, and then it cuts while the motion, so as he picks Baby Yoda up, the cut happens as the motion comes up. Okay, so instead of cutting, if he picked Baby Yoda up and then brought him all the way up, and then it cut to the close-up, it wouldn't have the same flow, you know what I mean? So that's a really simple example of, let me go back to full screen here, of kind of cutting on action and what that means, okay? There's another example there, which I'm gonna just breeze past, but it's a much faster paced one, but it's cutting, the same idea as it's cutting on action, and you guys can watch that on your own time. Okay, so let's talk about some tools now, and the same kind of rules apply, right? There's great features and capabilities out there. There's some, what are the costs? Is it free? Is it a few bucks? Is it 20 bucks? Whatever it might be. All those things are great to consider. And then of course, whatever your board policies are. But the great thing about the post process too is that most apps have, good trimming and or cutting features in them, and of course sharing and delivery and export features. Okay, and then there's apps that have some more advanced features. So I bring this up, this is at the pro level, and this is what we'd use at the college level. But the great thing is, like Avid Media Composer is what's used to cut most Hollywood stuff. And so this is high level stuff. But the reason I talk about these, and there's links to all these if you want to check them out, and maybe you've heard about them before, but most of those companies that build those apps have mobile, really cheap or free versions of that. So Adobe Premiere Rush, for instance, their Premiere Pro version is, 30 bucks a month or whatever to subscribe to, but the Rush version is free and it's mobile and it's really easy. And the bottom part there is Rush as an example. So you can edit, you can do color, you can, export to Instagram, whatever it might be. It's got some pretty great tools in there. And then Apple has Final Cut Pro X, but they also have iMovie, which again is either free or very cheap, I'm not sure. But there's also just built-in apps that are great for that too. So kind of looking for tools, which again, there's way beyond that too. WeVideo has similar things where you can trim, you can splice things together and then export and share. GoPro has some apps, and it kind of goes on and on from there. There's tons out there. So generally you just kind of want some tools that do those basic things. What can you do trims where you can cut on that action? If so, it's great. And it doesn't really matter which tool it is. If it allows you to do that, it's great. All right. Wrapping up here, one thing that we use a lot at the college level is stock content. And here's two resources, one called Pixabay, one called Pexels, which are free stock content sites. You can get photos, illustrations, video. It's all free to use. You can read, they've got their licensing on there. You can read a bit about it, but for basically student projects, no problem. We even did a film with students last year that actually went out to Film Fest and won some awards, and it was still we were allowed to use that stuff for free. And they're great sites if you want to check them out, but using stock content to fill in things maybe they can't shoot. So if they're setting up a scene, they're shooting a scene, maybe it's a big outdoor scene or something, and or maybe they want an establishing shot and then it cuts to an interior and they don't have that location for that exterior, then maybe they could get a stock clip of, a cabin on a mountain or whatever, and then they cut into where they're shooting in their home or whatever. So stock content can be really helpful too, as in the post-production process, if they need a shot or two here where they can fill in with stock that they maybe can't get in production themselves. All right, that's it. That was a lot, I think, maybe, I'm not sure, but if there's any questions now, by all means, I'd be happy to answer any.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. That was really great. I, for one, learned a lot as a bit of a newbie. So we did have some discussion in the chat about not being able to upload larger files. So how do students reduce their files so that it's easier to submit onto drives or class assignments or anything like that? Do you have any recommendations?
To compress files?
Yeah.
I think it's so hard to answer that because who knows what tools they're using, but I think the general idea, I mean, from a mobile perspective, I think most of the apps would shoot files that are pretty compressed already, but if they're working, let's say on a desktop, don't know. I might have to maybe get some more specifics on that because it just depends. I don't know. There's so many options for around that world. So I don't know. Sorry.
I have a question for you. Would you say that a lot of the apps that you recommended at the end there, are they relatively user friendly? What would you say is the best way? Like, would I have to like look at a manual to try and figure these things out, or can I just like go around and goof off and figure it out?
I think most mobile apps are like that. The more advanced one that I mentioned, Filmic Pro, might be the most hard to learn, I guess, but like Adobe Premiere Rush or the WeVideo stuff, it's all, if you've used a mobile camera app before, I think they're all pretty quick. As I said earlier on, that the learning curves on these apps are pretty short usually. So yeah, I think it's, there's nothing too crazy to learn out there in the mobile world. Yeah.
We have a question from Joseph. What are the main skills would you like students to have coming out of communication and technology programs in relation to video production and post-production?
That's a really great question. I think just any kind of video experience is great for us. So we have students that come in from all different levels, whether it's into our undergrad or into our postgrad, and usually the people that come into postgrad, their experience dates back to high school, and so. If they have some experience, some basic experience in shooting, it doesn't matter which cameras. A lot of kind of the softer or more creative things I talked about, like composition and a basic understanding of lighting. If they have experience in that gives them a head start for sure in the college world. Because then we'll teach them the tools that we have specifically. We've got some really high-end cameras. We've got some lower-end cameras. We've got high-end software and some easier software, and it kind of ranges depending on the program. But I think the more experience they have from maybe a creative perspective and maybe creating their own content is probably the best head start. Yeah.
Awesome. And that's actually a good lead into Joseph's follow-up question. What software do you use at the college?
Oh, we use a mix of everything. In our undergrad, we use Premiere Pro for editing. We use After Effects for motion graphics and some visual effects. We use, what else do we use? We use, in the postgrad level, we use Avid Media Composer and Premiere and After Effects and a program called Nuke, which is like high-end compositing. We use Cinema 4D for 3D work. Yeah, so it's kind of it's a big range, and there's even more than that. I'm drawing a blank on, but I think from a video, just straight up video editing perspective, it's Premiere and then some Avid and then some After Effects as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Matt, for sharing your knowledge with us and for answering all of these wonderful questions. We do have to cut it short, but if we didn't get to your question, just shoot us an email. We'd be happy to support you. Also, stick around for the next seminar that's happening in 1 minute. We're going to be covering the exact same content. Matt will be back with us. He will cover the same presentation. So stick around and maybe ask more wonderful questions. So just wanted to let you all know that the 2021 Youth Film Festival submissions are now open. There is no submission fee. Any student that is in high school and lives in Southwestern Ontario can submit. So please urge your students, whether it's English, drama, business, we have that promo video and music video category. So please encourage them to check it out. Our website, we posted in the chat there. So please head over there and see what we're all about and urge your students to submit. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Matt and Elise, for sharing your presentations with us. And we hope you all have a wonderful day.